Alright, so this is going to be my first YouTube episode. My name is Adam Itani. I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm pretty much known in my area for specializing in the Z32 300ZX models. I do work on all Z cars, specialize in all the years, worked on all of them just about. So been doing this a long time. I'm 36 years old. I grew up in the business. My father started a Z shop in the early 90s. It's called ZX Auto Center. We've been in the same spot since 1992. Pretty much, I wanted to start this channel. There's a lot of channels out there, you know, specifically car videos and channels, and there's a couple on there with Z or Z32 specific content, but I don't really see any of them that really get into depth on you know, either basic upgrades or basic maintenance, and get into detailed videos of that, you know, and pointers, things about the cars that, you know, some people have a lot of questions. You see on the Facebook, Instagram, sometimes you'll see people asking questions about basic things on these cars. And there's certain things about these cars that if you're going to own one, you're going to really want to know. I've had many of these cars over the years, and I can't seem to like keep one. I'll start a project on one or end up selling it for another one. But really, this one here, I finally got one that I'm going to keep for sure. This time, I said that before, and I actually do finish the build all the way. Story is, I bought a white 91. It was a two-seater model, original twin turbo, and I started buying a bunch of parts, you know, stocking up all the big power upgrades and everything to put the car together. And then I bought a red 2+2 because I really ended up wanting a 2+2 for the longer wheelbase, because I started out on the build wanting to do around 600 horsepower, which is a moderate build on these. And then I changed it up and I ended up buying bigger turbos, and so I was shooting for the 800 plus range. So the longer wheelbase was definitely the way to go. The red one I had was a 90, and I was just about to start to pull the motor on it, start doing the build of the internals, and then this car popped up. This one here is actually a 1990 2+2. It's an original twin turbo, which means it's not a US built car. This is actually a car from Japan, so it is a right-hand drive, as we can see. I started doing a couple things to the car, nothing too crazy yet. I did set up these gauges in the car. Oh, I'm putting the phone in the way, sorry. I did set up these gauges in the car because on the right hand drive, all of the options for pods were special order from overseas, and I didn't really like them, and I didn't want to go with a traditional side one that goes there on the pillar. So I came up with that setup there to put them all around the cluster. So the actual pods themselves, I'm going to mold those in. So they're just kind of like, I cut little holes in to put the tabs in so they can mount. But you know, there's little stuff like that I started doing on it. The car had a couple of things like some hard pipes and the intercoolers done. The wheels, I put them on there. They are a little big for the car, but it's just something for now. And I did put the J-Spec bumper, because when I bought the car, had a little bit of damage there, so the hood doesn't close 100%, but I plan on going through the body stuff on it. But the rest of the car is in great shape for the year, and I do want to do leather seats and stuff like that as I go. So this episode here I really wanted to get into was the alternator in the car started acting up. So I got this alternator over here I want to put in now, and also I'm in there because the alternator, you got to drop the sway bar. I figured, you know, why not time to put the sway bars on while I'm going to be taking the front one loose anyways, because to do the alternator in these cars you got to take pretty much the sway bar down. So I got these upgraded ones from Stillen, and I got the front and the rear one. They did come with the red polyurethane bushings, and then they also, on the rear, they had an option to pay a little more, and you get these adjustable ones for the rear. Now on the front ones here, I ordered these a while ago. I had them already. They're the SPL front adjustable links. So we'll not be running any of these. We're all going to be running adjustable. These are SPL, and these here are the optional ones you can get with the Stillen. If I remember correctly, I might have ordered those from CZP. It's been a little while since I ordered these, because these were originally supposed to be for the red car that I had. So yeah, so another thing, what you want to do is, so on the ID of this alternator, as you can see, it's a used one, so it's not brand new. This is actually an alternator from a 350Z or G35. So with these alternators, they are an upgrade on the Z32. So this came from a Z33, it'll go on a Z32. So these alternators do work, it's just you have to change a few things up. Now, there's some differences in it, okay? Now, what's nice about this alternator, the top nut here, which goes in them, the Z32 has like this dumb loose nut thingy that locks in the back. So when you put the bolt in, you got to kind of like hold the nut in when you're putting it together so it doesn't fall out. And a lot of times they're a pain. If you got really big hands, you can't get around back there really. So this is a better design. It has the nut, the threaded section already made in it, so it's not a big deal anymore. It takes the same size style bolt that goes in the upper ears. Now, the difference you'll run into is the lower bracket on the alternators in a different position. Usually the Z32 it'll be straight up and down. These are a little bit cocked. So what you have to do with these, now when I part these G35 350Z cars out, when I keep the alternators, I keep this bracket on. Now, because I know this bracket can be used to modify the lower bracket on the Z32. So all you have to do is you'll cut this bracket in this area here. I'll do a demonstration showing that, how I set this up. Now the bracket is on it, it's offset. See how it's not straight? So that being offset, when you cut around this section, you'll be able to put this raised section, drill a hole, and put it into the Z32 stock lower adjuster bracket. So you're able to utilize the factory brackets to work with this alternator. You just have to know where to do it and cut it at and do a drill. So when I do it like that, I'm able to set it up with the Z32 stock size belt. So that makes life easier later on if you need to replace belts. You don't have to worry about measuring belts and all that nonsense. So every time I modify something, I try to take all these things into consideration. Okay, so the next thing is that these newer style alternators, the newer cars, because these put out around 115 amp to 125 in between those range. The stock is on the Z32 is 90 amp. Now there's other guys out there that have used the Titan alternator, upgraded with the Titans alternator, the 5.6 liter. But I haven't done one yet, but I do know that those are more entailed to get to work. But this is a far simpler one to do, and it'll work great. Like, I've already done this alternator swap on many of the older Z's with electric fans, with systems, and just the bump and amperage that these offer is tremendously better. And these alternators are even way better than the Z32 stock alternator. And these are so much more reliable, but just make sure you stick with the used original. I hate aftermarket alternators and starters. They're nothing but problems. The only ones that I like aftermarket are actually Denso, which is the brand that actually a lot of the makers like Honda and Toyota, they all use from the factory, is Denso. So those aftermarket alternators and starters will cost more, but you get what you pay for, and that's tried and true when it comes to the alternators and starters and pretty much any part on your car. But with these being used, they hold up fine. I've never had any issues of them. If anybody's interested in getting any of these alternators and me setting up the brackets for them, I'm willing to do that for a fee, of course. But I could pretty much send you the alternator with the brackets and everything already set up. It's ready to go. And then the other thing, I actually do two of these, because these are a 6-groove pulley. So you'll run into that problem with the Z32 is a 4-groove. So what I do is I'll modify this pulley here I'll knock it down to where it's a 4-groove. So it'll be set up like the factory belt. You don't have to worry about it jumping off, because I have done these in the past. before I found I could modify these. Put them together without modifying them. They stayed on. It just, if the belt ever came loose, it would be the possibility of it jumping tooth and throwing the belt off. So yeah, I'll show how I set that up and the bracket, so you guys can more understand how I did that. I don't mind sharing knowledge of how I did things, so that way if you're a do-it-yourselfer and you want to do it, you can do it yourself, or you can talk to somebody like me and have you set you up with what you need, but at least you'll see how I done it, and that you'll know that the setup will work. Now another pointer. The Z32's main power supply wire, which is this one in the back, is actually like if I remember correctly, two like 12 gauge wires. So they're two 12 gauge size wires. They're very small. This is the stock harness from the 350Z, and it's actually about a 4 gauge, which is a lot bigger than the ones that come stock in the Z32. So what I do is usually on the left-hand drive cars, this harness would reach the alternator to the battery, but my car being the right-hand drive, it's not a left-hand, this won't reach because the battery's on the other side of the engine and it's a lot longer of a length. So in this case, I'm not going to be using this wire, but I usually would use this wire and set it up with it. So if I was going to use this wire, you can use any other wire, but you could add this to the same with the wires that are already on the Z. Just leave those on. You'll have to put a bigger lug on those wires, and then I would add the extra wire too as well, and run it to the battery. Now when you do that, you're going to want to run an inline fuse like you would an amplifier wire. So up over here, let's say you would have it cut around this range and put a fuse in line. That way this circuit's protected. If anything ever did nick the wire or whatnot, it'll be protected. It'll just pop the fuse and you won't burn your car to the ground. So always use fuses on main big power wires, or anything important and stuff that you're adding to the car, always fuse it. You'll see that I do that a lot on any of the projects I'm doing in aftermarket wiring and stuff. So, and this extra wire here, that's actually where the starter on those cars would also be hooked up to it. The starter would be back here. So what I'll do is on this wire, I'll cut this lug off, this one here coming off the wire, and I'll insulate and wrap all this stuff up so it's safe, and I'll actually hook up this end to the alternator. So that way it makes the wire longer. It's a very good quality wire, so that's why I like to use them when I can. Now in my case, my car being a right-hand drive, that won't work. It's too short. I could use it and bridge two wires together, but I'd rather not do that. I had already ran this 0 gauge wire into the Z. Okay, so this 0 gauge wire is sealed and going into this grommet boot right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it here. I already started making brackets for those, so they'll stay nice and sturdy. And I do have my fender liners that will go in here. And when at the end, I'm going to actually move this wire down. I think I've already decided I'm going to put the big inline fuse here, which is this thing right there is what I got. So it's a pretty good size. I think I had like a 150 amp fuse in there. Which you have to go by, like this is running to my amps. Well, you have to see what your draw is going to be from your amps, and around, it was like 130 amp, I believe, 140 amps that my two amps are going to be drawing. So this is a 150, which is enough for those. You don't want to overfuse them because in a lot of amps they don't like that, so it can cause issues with the amps. So don't always run bigger, don't always mean better in all cases, so take that into consideration. All you have to do is look at your amps and see how many fuses that they're using and add those fuses up, and usually you'll get your number. Okay, so I'm going to end up running it under here. I already set up a bracket right there. I don't know if you can see that good or not, but before the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insulate this wiring here. But as long as you have brackets holding your wires, they're not going to be jumping around. So I'm going to insulate that wire there. So this is the cross member here. It's stationary, it doesn't move or anything. It is kind of close to the sway bars here, my new ones I'm putting in gonna be a little bit thicker, but I'll make sure and check clearances. So what I could do is also jack the suspension and see where the sway bars move. As long as they're not rubbing and touching, you'll be fine. I'm going to be doing a wire tuck on this car later, so I could have ran the stuff more on the top side of things, but if I'm doing the wire tuck, I don't want a bunch of wires around there, so we'll just have to take our time with it, do a good job. Then we can run them down here. So I got this one here hanging down, so when I get ready I got to cut to length and put a lug terminal in there. And I was wanting to think about putting a fuse down closer to here, because you can run as many fuses in line as you want just for extra safety, you know. But as long as the wire's insulated, you should have no problems. But if you can add extra fuses, it's always a good idea. So yeah, so we have to take down the sway bar, which is this one. We take it all the way out, and then we can gain more access to the alternator. I'm about to call it a starter. It's been a long day. But yeah, I'll show you when I get it down what it looks like in comparison, and we can go from there. Alright, so back at it. We're back up under the Z. So right now I started taking off the sway, so this side of the sway bar. So what we have going on here is that you'll have the 214s that are right up in here. As you can see right there above the wire, I got my fingers. There's going to be two there, and you got your sway bar link on this side, which is really hard to see, but it's going up under there. So you got the couple 14s you got to take off. I mean, invest in tools that'll make life a lot easier. I got this 14 right here. What I'll do is I'll put it around the shock, and I'll get to the nut back there. I know you really can't see, and this camera angle is a little bit tight, so I'm not on a lift. But pretty much that's what you're gonna have to do. Take out these 14s. It'll be the same amount on the other side. If you invest in an impact wrench, it'll make life so much easier. These things help a lot. Having the right tool for the job make life a lot easier. And you don't want to hand job all the tools, all the things on the car. The tools will wear you out. Alright, so on the Z, and starting to work on getting this alternator out. Alright, so what you're going to have is up here, all the way on the top, where my finger's at, there's a 17. That's the long bolt that goes in the top of yours. Alright, so I had already successfully taken out the lower bracket, which is right here. So this is the lower bracket there, okay. So you got a bolt hole up there that goes into the oil pump. Okay, so when you get that 12 off, and you get this other one out the back side, it's going to be just a regular nut. It's for the adjuster, so you got to take the adjuster nut. Alright, so we got the alternator out the Z, and we got a side-by-side comparison here with the G35 350 and the stock Z32. As you can see, I was telling you about the mounting holes. They were being pretty much 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. And then this one here being 12 o'clock and about 4 o'clock. So that's why we have to make that change with the bracket. That way we can get the belt and this Z32 lower bracket to work in conjunction with this. So basically what we're going to end up doing, this bracket is actually on upside down. So when you actually take it off, we're going to flip it around. So this one would normally go on here like this, from the factory on this car's position. So what I'll do is I'll take this one. Alright, so I'm going to take the pulley. I got it off. It was a 24 millimeter impact. You know, definitely invest in impact. You're going to be doing any type of mechanical work on your car. That makes life so much easier, because if I had to take this off with a big ratchet, it would have been a headache trying to hold the pulley, and you might scratch it up. And so definitely. So got this on a metal surface here. Alright, so the best method really on these pulleys is to put them in a vise. So you have it sitting like this, and the back side of it's pushing on the shank area, or where the main bolt shaft of the alternator would go, because you don't want to put the vise on your back side of your pulley, because it'll bend the ones you don't want to bend. So, and then you'll just roll these front sides down to you have to work it around 2-3 times, take it off, spin it, till you get down to the rows. So you got to count your splines, make sure you don't go past it. So as you can see, you just roll these in. And you're gonna have to loosen it. There's one here that needs to be hit a little bit more. Alright, so now let's roll it down. See, this side is higher here. Roll it down. Spin. See, this side here is higher than the rest. Alright, so now we got about one whole spline gone. So it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's 5 now. So we're gonna lock it back down. We're gonna take out this 5th one here. This is gonna be our last one. The last one's a little bit harder than the rest. So you might have to get it down halfway, spin it, get the other side down, and go back to it. Gotta make sure this thing here is tight. Gotta get a better table for this kind of stuff. I got stuff falling down back there. Slide on me a little bit, but as we're looking at it, it's getting close. You can see you got a few little high spots, so when you work on the high spots, you get those knocked down as you go. So we'll just keep locking in place and working ourselves around. That bigger keeps wanting to slide on me. Okay, so this here is actually sufficient. Okay, so if you look at it, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 splines. There's a little bit of that one there showing, but I mean, that belt is going to stay in place. It's not going to jump out of groove. There's a tall enough groove here to keep the belt in line, so we're not going to have any issues with it jumping. See a little high spot right here. Could be knocked down and made perfect, but I mean, essentially, it's going to do the job. Don't cost you anything besides a hammer and a little bit of time. And then you can get this to hold a 4-groove belt now. Alright, so I'm under the Z, and that terminal I was telling you about, that's the M6 by 1.0 size. what I'm doing is I'm holding the lug terminal with these pliers. Put some gloves on, and I have this this reamer here tool. So it's the pointy one. It'll help get in there, and just basically you're just gonna just drill it out. I've already been doing it a little bit before I turn the video on, but I want to get it set up already before I turn it on. Okay, you can kind of see a little bit there where it's a little bit bigger. So what I do is I'll grab a 12 nut that I got, because that's the same size as the lug terminal, and I'll see if it actually fits in or not. It still does not, so I'm gonna have to go a little bit more. But if this thing's not breaking, I'll have to put a new one. And just like that, it broke. So gonna have to put a new one on. Rats. But I was expecting that. I've only had it work, I think 2 out of every time I've tried it. But if it does break off, then it's pretty much set up, because you can just crimp a lug terminal that's on that smaller lug terminal that's still left on there. So you can still use what you got. So I'll just have to get a lug terminal crimped on that one. Alright, so here's where I'm at. So what I did was, the small original lug terminal broke off on me, which is, I had it over there because I used a crimping tool, so I stuck it through the lines. So the one that broke off is still on there, I crimped on, and the new one that has the larger hole. So we can utilize the original one, and we're gonna add the big 0 gauge. So what I like to do, well, first I got this cool crimping tool. This thing here is awesome. It does big wires and smaller wires. So what it does is put your lug terminal inside the center where the point is, put it on the ground, you hammer it 3 times pretty hard. You can go additional hits if you need to, but usually you can tell when it's done because it'll look nice and crimped. So it does a good job of that. But anytime if you're dealing with like wires that are outside in the elements, you want to go the extra step and solder the lug terminal to the wire, because that way it'll also seal the wire better, and moisture can't get inside the contacts and then eventually eat the wire up and it break off. I usually like to use heat shrink. I have a heat shrink for the smaller one that'll fit, but I ran out of the really big. Alright, picking up where I left off. So I was getting at, you want to use heat shrink on these if you can, always better. I'm gonna have to just wrap this one up with some good quality electrical tape. I actually have some friction tape I'm gonna use on this, but always outside connections like these, you want to solder them together. It's always better that way. So I like to use a little mini torch. It's gonna melt a little bit of the wire at the end, but it'll be okay. We're gonna wrap all that, but the trick is just heat up the whole thing. Don't go just for the wire. It works a lot better when you do it like this, and you'll watch it sink in when it gets hot enough. So just gonna set this on here for a little bit. When a mini torch does the job, you gotta let it heat up. Use one of them really big ones, and it'll catch the outside of the wire, melt it too quickly. So this one's not too small, not too big. Start to see it smoking a little bit, means it's getting close. And usually when you get it started, it'll be good. And if you use this thinner style solder, it works a lot easier than that thick stuff. Thick stuff, you have to heat it up way too much. Excuse me. I need to quit smoking. I've been smoking for many years, and it's a bad, nasty habit. A lot of mechanics, they smoke, so it's not good. Definitely need to quit. I don't have any health issues right now, but definitely need to quit before any start. Probably should have cut back the wire, the insulation just a little bit further. We'll still get it going here in a second. Start seeing it sink inside. That's what we want. A little bit of a tire fire going. Definitely don't want to inhale that stuff. Oh, shit. This is being a little bit of a butthole. Usually it gets going quicker than this. I think it's starting to finally get up the temp. Try flipping it this way. Might better look back here. There we go. It's got kind of sinking inside the lug. That's what you want. You can just stay in one spot. It'll keep going down and filling up. There's no better connection than a soldered connection, so you don't have to worry about the weather getting in there and eating it up. And there we go. As soon as it starts to flow inside, that's what you want. Just like that. This thing burning, my hands getting so hot. Ooh, yeah. Alright, we just about got enough in here. There's definitely a good amount of solder in there. Would like to get this side a little bit if possible. Right here, where it's open pretty good. Got a solder joint all the way in there, so definitely don't touch that metal lug. It's hot as hell. Do something to cool it down. But if you don't know, you cool off a hot metal welded piece or soldered piece. What it does is it shrinks the metal quicker than letting it cool on its own, and therefore making it stronger, making the weld stronger, the solder stronger. But yeah, just a little tip there. I'm gonna wipe it off. We'll get some of that friction tape I was talking about. Wrap that up at the end and go a little bit further down with it. Not too crazy, but enough where it's nice and strong. And then we'll route that thing in place and start getting an alternator in place. So that'll be up next. Alright, so here's where we're at. I got the aftermarket Stirling sway bar in the front. I went ahead and installed it. I didn't show a video of that because it was pretty much self-explanatory. It only held in by a couple of bolts. Alright, so I'll do this. I'm going to take the camera off. Alright, so here's where we're at. Trying to see there's some light under here. So we got the alternator installed. Really can't see much. Sorry, I apologize about the lighting. So this is the bracket installed. Kind of should have did this video when the sway bar was out of the way. But you can see I cut that one bracket and I made a little drop. It's like an extension drop basically. And this is going to hook up, had a drill and cut in one spot. And the rest of it was able to work pretty well. Kind of see how it goes on the back side. I put an old nut as a spacer for that stud. I mean, later on I'll do it fancy with actual real spacer. So I plan on doing a bunch of engine dress ups later on. So that'll be something I'll, clean up and do better with. So I don't have the adjustable link installed on this side yet because it's easier to do because they're adjustable. When you have these sway bars in and they're adjustable, you want to kind of set one side up first, kind of like how I did this one. Sorry if I get some lighting in here. Kind of see how I got this one installed. The adjustments are loose on it. That way we can adjust it. That turnbuckle is the black one in the center. I wish I did this during the daytime. Alright, so there's like a turnbuckle thing in the middle and two locking nuts on the top and bottom. So right now I got it loose. So basically what you want to do is you want with the car's weight sitting on tires. That's why I got the car sitting on tires right now, because what you want the weight of the car sitting down and bounce it a few times. When you get it on its weight, bounce it a few times. And what you want to see is the sway bar pretty much even. You don't want it too high or too low. With the car sitting still on the ground, you want the sway bar pretty much even, level, I guess that would be the best word for it. I kind of adjusted it by eyeball. It is pretty close already. I guess another beauty there I work on. That's a NA I swapped twin turbo about 3 years ago. So as you can kind of see, it could come down just a little bit. It can come down just a little bit. It doesn't need much. But like I was saying, basically, you just want it level and straight. You don't want it too high. You don't want it too low. Because if you have it too high or too low, your sway bar is not going to act right. So you want it level with the weight of the car sitting. That's pretty much it. As far as the install for the zero gauge, I did the wire here. I strapped it. I got a couple of spots I strapped it in. I'm going to check for wheel clearance here shortly after I'm done with the sway bar. I should clear just fine, but if it does have an issue, then I'll have to move the wire, but no big deal. But that's pretty much where I want it right now. And that's pretty much it for this setup here. As I do more, I'll show more stuff on the build of this car as we go. I got a lot of plans for this car, so if you guys like what you see, post a comment. Tell me what you would like to see me do on these cars. Stuff like timing belt maintenance, valve cover maintenance, stuff people want to learn and get pointers on, which are the more expensive jobs on these cars, like timing belts, as far as maintenance and valve cover gasket jobs. Then we can do one on clutches. Just tell me what you guys would like to see and what we could do to make the channel better. Because I'm here to do it for you guys. So post a comment, like the channel if you like it, and if you don't like it, tell me what things I can do to make it better. As a Z community, I want to be here for everybody that wants to learn, and I can share some of my knowledge. Alright, I'm signing off, guys.